I'm turning and talking to my husband, and then we're having to have heavy conversations a year and a half into our marriage. Like, I told him, this is, the life insurance policy I have set up at my job. This is how much you would get. Ooh, la, la, la. Ooh, la, la. Hey everybody. I've tried to record this video several times, including like last year after we posted our first video about autumn, and it has failed so many times, but nevertheless, here we are. Hopefully this is the last time I'm having to sit down and try to record this. But I just wanted to talk about having preeclampsia with my last pregnancy and that leading to Hellp syndrome, and just kind of what I experienced with both of those, just so that somebody has like a reference to look back or to look to if they were ever unfortunately in that situation. Because I remember being in the hospital bed, like looking on YouTube to see if anybody said like what they went through and kind of how things ended up. Because I knew while I was in the hospital, I'm like, I've never heard of this before. What is happening? What do you mean my body is not doing what it's supposed to do? Like, this is just all foreign to me, and everything just happens so fast. So I just wanted to hopefully make a quick video talking about that. What is preeclampsia? Preeclampsia is defined as having high blood pressure, extreme swelling in your hands and feet, and having protein in your urine, and it typically shows up 20 weeks or after while you're pregnant. And so that's preeclampsia. Having eclampsia is when preeclampsia advances and you start to have you end up having a seizure. And that's like one of the main things that they worry about once you do have preeclampsia, and they monitor you and watch you like a hawk. In my situation, as soon as they saw the protein in my urine, they sent me to the hospital. So I'm not sure if women, like if they're defined as having preeclampsia, if they immediately get admitted, but I do know that that's what happened to me. And then Hellp syndrome is, you don't, technically speaking, you don't have to have preeclampsia to have Hellp syndrome, but more often than not, women are diagnosed with preeclampsia first, and then it leads to Hellp syndrome. And Hellp syndrome is life-threatening and rare, but it's also high blood pressure, of course, elevated liver enzymes, and a low blood platelet count. Now, with each of these, it's no cause for it. They don't find a reason for it. They find that like specific women are more likely to get it. Like if you're obese, black women are more likely to get it. If you, just several things that you can like Google on the internet, but ultimately like nothing really causes it, because black women have babies all the time and they're fine. Obese women have babies all the time and they're fine. So it's just really like, it can happen to anybody. And so for my situation, at about 20 weeks, we went for the anatomy scan. And with Autumn, we found out that she was growth restricted. We found out my cervix was shortening, and then my blood pressure started to creep up. At that appointment, they weren't too worried about my blood pressure at that time. They just noted it. But it was more focused on Autumn and like talking about her survival and things like that, which that's a whole another video that my husband and I are actually going to go in depth about the things that happened to her and her being in the hospital for 7 months and all of that. But so at that visit, I was immediately put into the high risk category, and we had visits back to back for a month. So roughly about week 24, all the while we're going every week, my blood pressure is creeping up, and the conversation has now shifted from focusing on Autumn to now focusing on me and my health. And the doctor's like, I'm starting getting worried about you at like week 23. He's like, I'm starting getting worried about your health. Do you know what preeclampsia is? I'm like, no. He's like, okay. And then he just left the conversation at that. Then I went back for week 24, and we had the visit where they checked my blood pressure, and my blood pressure wasn't, okay, it's high. It was high, but in comparison to the numbers that I've seen before, I'm like, it's not that high. It was high. It was 146 over 102 when I was at the doctor's office. And that whole visit, they were trying to get a better blood pressure out of me. And then they were trying to get me to use the bathroom, and I couldn't give them any urine. So finally I was able to go to the restroom, and they were like, we have to test your pee before you leave. And they were able to test my pee, and as soon as they came back in there with the results, they were like, you gotta go to the hospital now. Like, you have to leave. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? Like, what's going on? I had 3 plus protein in my urine, and they were like, it's off the charts and you need to go to the hospital now. So ultimately what officially put me in the category of having preeclampsia was the protein in my urine. Like, my swelling was really bad. I'll see if I can find the picture of my feet, and the swelling was just really bad. And at the time, before I got to the hospital, I just thought it was regular pregnancy swelling because it was my first time being pregnant. I'm like, oh, that's the kind of swelling that pregnant people get. I didn't think it was gonna be that bad, but it was pretty bad. So, but now being pregnant again, it's like, oh, that's not the same thing. That is 2 totally different things. So, I had to go to the hospital to be admitted. This was September 23rd. And so, we were in the hospital, and as soon as I got there, they admitted me, and they pumped me with magnesium, I want to say for 24 hours. And I had to, as long as I was like on magnesium, I had to drink like nothing but fluids, so like broths and stuff like that. And the reason why they do that is to prevent seizures, because like I said, from going preeclampsia to eclampsia, it's having seizures. That's what makes the difference. And thank God I didn't have any seizures, but they use magnesium to try to prevent that from happening. So while I was there, they will come in when they do their, like the nurses come in every 4 hours to do like a little check on you, where they check your fever, they check your blood pressures and things like that. And they would always ask, like, are you feeling dizzy, lightheaded? Are you seeing spots? Like, they would always ask these questions every 4 hours just to make sure, because that's the sign that's going to be like, oh, we need to jump in and do something. And so I was in the hospital for 10 days. And so on the 23rd, their main goal was to try to get me, I don't want to say stabilized, but stabilized. And so what that looked like was putting me on blood pressure medicine and waiting till my blood pressure got to a safer place. And I don't have the numbers of what my blood pressure numbers were looking like when I was in the hospital, but I know that they were higher than what this was, because when I was admitted into the hospital, it was 160 over 108, and so it continued just to creep up. And so they're like, it just moves so fast. So they were finally able to get me to a place where they had me with the blood pressure medicine in my system for a while, and the swelling was just getting worse and worse. But they were able to move me from, like, you know, in the hospital on the hall, you're like, if you're in the front, you're like active labor, like you're about to have a baby. You need to be watched like a hawk. That's where I was for a few days, and then they moved me back to, like, you just need to be monitored. And so the blood pressure kept going up. The swelling kept getting worse. I know I mentioned this before, but when I was pregnant with Autumn through the whole 24 weeks, I didn't get like any stretch marks at all. But my time in the hospital, I expanded so much, and I'll like insert pictures and stuff or whatever I have. I expanded so much that I remember like seeing myself in the mirror and like waddling, and I'm like, when did I get this big? Like, it was just, I was so big. But yeah, and so the goal was to keep me pregnant for as long as possible, to give both of us, to continue to give her a better chance at life, pretty much, so that she can get bigger and grow as much as she can inside the womb. And so that was their goal initially. And they told me, you know, if you were to go into labor, then we're not going to stop the labor, because I continued to get worse and worse. So eventually, they were even talking about, like, I was in there in September. She wasn't due till January, and their goal was to get me to like 32 weeks or something, and then had like induce me or give me a C-section to have her. So we were there for days, and with the mindset of, oh, we're gonna be here for a while. And I know the lighting is changing because the sun is going down. I can't find my plug to my light, so here we are. But what just happened?
I won twice. You won 4.
We just played Connect 4. Who could win out of 3?
Okay, I lost 3-0.
I beat him 3 times in a row in less than 10 minutes. What you got to say? Nothing?
Eat a dick.
Okay. So, babe, what's your final score?
11-1, you win.
11-1?
11 in a draw. I got 0 wins.
And how long did that take? How long was you playing?
Probably 10 minutes. So
we just had to try to get comfortable. And I was just, you know, when dealing with this, you don't feel anything. Like, you don't feel your blood pressure going up. You don't feel protein in your urine. You don't feel your kidneys doing this, your liver. You don't feel any of that. I mean, you feel the swelling. Like, you see that, like, if you're walking, you see how bad the swelling is in your feet. But that's the scariest thing about it. All of this is, like, you don't know that any of this is going on with your body, and life-threatening things is going on with your body until you actually go and get your blood ran, or you go to the hospital and they evaluate you and check you out. Scariest thing, scariest part of all of that. And so when I was there, when I first got there, my blood platelet count was 170. So days are going by. We're setting up in our mind that I'm going to be here for a long time. And then on September 29th, so it's been 6 days at that point, Daquan was with me the whole time. He tried to get up and he tried to get up and go to work that day, have valet pull his car. As soon as they pulled his car up, I'm calling him like, you have to come back. I went to the restroom and I saw blood and called the nurses in. They're like, okay, you're dilated XYZ amount. And they were like, we're having this baby today. And so after that, you know, labor happened and those contractions happened. And I ended up having her within like 2-3 hours. Like, it moved very, very fast. And so I had the baby, and soon after that, they monitored me really closely, and they put me right back on magnesium as soon as I had her. And that's when things started to get worse. They put me on the this blood pressure machine that checked your blood pressure every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, and then started doing it every 30, every 45, every hour, because of how bad my blood pressure was getting. And it was like the most uncomfortable 24 hours because I had a blood pressure cuff here. It was the day I gave labor. I had a catheter in. I had like 3 spots where they had IVs in me, and I couldn't sleep. It was very, very traumatizing. Like, it was a lot. And so that was like the first 24 hours. So October 1st, that's when Hellp syndrome kicked in. And the way they knew that is by checking my blood. So there was a point where they were checking my blood a lot more often than initially. Initially, they were just checking it once a day. But once they saw my numbers start to dip, then they would check it every 4 hours. Then they moved to every 8 hours. But they noticed that it started to dip more, and so they would check it every 4 hours. And so on the 1st, my blood platelet counts dropped to 60. And that's not normal range at all. Now, that would be the one time I will say that you could feel that, because it makes you weak. It makes you tired. And then I could also notice, like, they would also check the the way that your blood clots. So like every time they would come in and stick me, you know, usually when you get a stick, your blood dries up and you're fine. But like the phlebotomist would come in and try to find a vein, get a vein. I was so bruised because of all the checking with the blood and all the needles that they were doing. My arms were so bruised because I was there for 10 days and it was so aggressive getting these blood samples every 4 hours. And they would stand there and just hold the little cotton pad down, waiting for my blood to clot because it wasn't clotting. So they were checking those numbers. About the second day after I had her, they ended up having to do an ultrasound on my liver because it's like 3 different numbers that they really focus on and pay attention, which one is the blood platelet count and the other 2 are checking liver function and kidney function. Your kidneys, like once you get to the point where your kidneys are your kidneys are overworking, so it's they're not able to filter the protein, and that's what's causing the protein to spill out into your body and you pee it out. And so that's a sign of like your kidneys are overworking. And so they had to look at my kidneys. They had to do an ultrasound on the liver just to be sure. And you know, every time they did that, things checked out normal, things were normal. It was just like, this is still happening. And the only way to cure Hellp syndrome is to have the baby. The only way to cure preeclampsia is to have the baby get the placenta out of you. And so it's possible, and it does happen often, that even after you have the baby, that you can get sicker. You can still get preeclampsia, you can still get Hellp syndrome. And that's basically what was happening to me. And it got to a point where, you know, they're coming in and having these real heavy conversations with us, and then I'm turning and talking to my husband, and then we're having to have heavy conversations a year and a half into our marriage. Like, I told him, this is, you know, the life insurance policy I have set up at my job. This is how much you would get if something were to happen. You know, please make sure you call my mom, you call my sister. I need you to call Apostle Valerie, Pastor Ursula. Like, I need you to try to listen off these people, like top 5. I need you to call these people so they can start praying for me so I can have a chance, because the way these doctors are talking, it is not looking good. I mean, because, you know, when you're basically at a point where like your organs are not failing, but your organs are like not doing what they're supposed to do and not working properly. And it's like, my thought process is, you know, you guys said that if I had this baby, I would be fine. But I'm not fine. Like, it's been 2 days now and I've had this baby and I'm getting sicker. And I'm like, I've never been sick before in my life, never been to the hospital before in my life, never had issues. Why is this happening? Like, when am I going to bounce back? When am I going to get better? And so it's upsetting. Like, I think the emotional toll of that piece right there was heavier than I thought that it would be, because you can't control it. Like, you can't control what your body is doing. You're just sick. And then they also can't do anything about it to treat you and get you better. They can treat if something were to happen, like if I were to have a seizure, or if I would need a blood transfusion, because that's what you're looking at when your blood platelets drop that low, is getting a blood transfusion. You know, they can give you those things to treat it, but that doesn't mean that Hellp syndrome is gone. That doesn't mean preeclampsia is gone. That just means they're treating what happened right then. You still have to wait for your body to regulate. And so that's what you're doing the whole time, is just waiting for your body to fix itself. And so it was really upsetting, really discouraging. And we had people just praying for us. And there was one day where I was having this conversation with the doctor, like crying, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not, like, why is this not fixing? And, you know, the doctor had the Bible out, and the doctor was like, you know, this is the verse of the children of Israel getting out of Egypt. And he started talking about, you know, how that was a struggle for them, but they eventually made it out, and trying to relay that to my situation. And I'm just like, okay, like, I hear you, but like, I'm not trying to hear this sermon right now. And then I had this lady come in, and she was talking about you know, you guys are so lucky you came here with your baby being that small, because certain hospitals wouldn't even accept her, you know. And then she starts talking about how good God was. Then the chaplain comes in there asking if he can pray for us and all this other stuff. People referencing God, and I'm just like, okay, God, like, I hear you. And so that night, it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up and I just started praying, and I started laying hands on myself, and I started calling my body back into alignment. I started calling the organs to function as they should. I started like talking to these blood platelets and telling them to come back. I'm like pacing back and forth in the room, like speaking in tongues, all of this stuff. And so they came, just like routine every day. They came to draw my blood. After that, it was like, you know, the first blood draw day, so it was like 4 o'clock in the morning when they came. And then they drew the blood and sent the results in. And so one of the doctors called me and they were like, hey, you know, we got your results back in. Because at this point, like I told you guys, they're doing it every 4 hours, just trying to check. And they know like how upset I was. I wasn't even sleeping any of those nights. Like I did not sleep, like, which I ended up having to go back to the hospital for. But that's a whole nother story. But the doctor called and was like, hey, you know, we got your results back. And it looks like your blood platelet count did come back up. And but these two numbers are kind of saying the same. I'm sorry, I don't have better news. And I was like, no, don't tell me you're sorry. You don't do that, because you give me really good news. You just showed me what opening my own mouth and praying could do for me. And it's on. Like, that's all I needed to hear. Like, don't even, no, I'm good. Like, I'm good. I'm about to, it's over. Like, I'm getting out of this hospital. I'm getting out of this Hellp syndrome. It's done. And so after that, I just kept praying, kept decreeing and declaring things. And sure enough, like the next day or the day after, we left. I got discharged, and they felt good enough because my platelet count did turn around and those numbers did start to reverse. So you're really just waiting for your body to regulate. That's just it. Like, you don't feel any of this going on, and all it takes is time. It takes time for your body to heal. And I do want to mention, like, even with blood pressure, like, that situation is so serious where I had her the end of September. They had me on a 30-day supply of the blood pressure medicine I was on in the hospital. But after that, so that was roughly the end of October. And then I went to urgent care like mid-December, and it was something completely unrelated. And they checked my blood pressure and they were like, your blood pressure is really high. Do you have a primary care physician? You know, are you doing anything about this? Because it's really high. And I was like, oh, wasn't expecting that, because it had been a while. And so I ended up getting a primary care physician, and my blood pressure was really high. And I asked her, like, does this mean that I have like hypertension now? Like, am I always gonna have high blood pressure? So she said that you're not at a place where your blood pressure needs to be medicated. Like, it's not that high, but it is high. And I do believe that, you know, the further you get away from where you have the baby, the better your blood pressure will get. And it was like March, I went back and it was somewhat okay, but it still wasn't normal. And so it really took, like, I want to say September, it took like a whole year for my blood pressure to regulate again by itself. Now, I'm not a person who's ever had high blood pressure, and I wasn't a person who lived a lifestyle of somebody who had high blood pressure, meaning like I ate what I wanted to eat. Like, I wasn't exercising like that. And I will say that the biggest thing that helped my blood pressure to be regulated is losing weight, working out, and eating better, because I was able to see that drop and that change. Also coupled with time, like she said, time is what helps it. But it wasn't until I went for my first doctor's appointment with this pregnancy. So we're talking September 2020 to, I don't even know when I got pregnant. yeah, okay. Till like my first doctor's appointment with this baby, which was like February of 2022, where I wasn't paying attention to my blood pressure, and that was like the most normal reading I had had since before being pregnant at all. It was like 116 or 119 or something over something, and I was like, it really took that long. And battery's getting low. So one of the other things a lot of the doctors mentioned when we were being discharged is don't have kids anymore. Some of them straight up told us like, you guys don't need to have kids anymore. If you do try to have kids, don't do it anytime soon. And some of them were just like, just don't do it. And it's because like once you've had preeclampsia, once you've had it so severe, once you've had Hellp syndrome, once you've had it so early in your pregnancy, once your body goes into labor spontaneously by itself, then you hit all these categories of like, okay, don't ever have a baby again, because you're more likely to have it again and to give birth early again, basically go through the same thing. And nobody wants to go through that again. And so that's one thing that they did tell us. Now I'm pregnant again in my third trimester, like 35 weeks right now, and I don't have preeclampsia, I don't have Hellp syndrome, I don't have any of that, and I've made it this far where this baby is growing healthy, and I've had a healthy enough pregnancy. Now if you watch any of my other videos, then you know that I do drink beet juice every day to help with regulating my blood pressure, because my blood pressure was starting to go up, but it's regulated enough now for me to not be on medicine. So that is one of the things that they did say, and that is a precaution to look out for, because I know people who've had like 5 kids, and every time they had those kids, they had preeclampsia. And so it is valid that if you've had it once, you'll have it again. And then then that makes you high risk for any other pregnancy after that. So like technically now I'm still high risk because of my last pregnancy, and throughout this whole pregnancy I've been high risk. And they've watched me like a hawk. Even now when I hit 32 weeks, I have to go to the hospital every single week. I mean, I have to go to the doctor's office every single week for ultrasounds and OB visits and things like that. But saying that to say, we prayed, and you can believe what the doctors say and follow that, don't have kids again. But we're not the kind of people who would do that. Now don't get me wrong, like when we first got pregnant and heard about us being pregnant this time around, it was very scary, because that wasn't the plan, and it was so soon after, and it was like, but the doctor said this, the doctor said that, and it was just like, we're just gonna put it in God's hands, because there's no way I can sit up here and stress about that every single day. You can't sit up here and stress about that every single day. And doing that has allowed us to get this far and not have any hospitalizations, not have us worry about much. You guys saw that I did do the cerclage because my cervix was shortening again, but all these things are like being handled. The blood pressure is being handled. The shortened cervix is being handled. So it's okay. It's fine. Like, we're good over here. And I was in one of the worst case scenarios. Like, anytime a new person looks at my file when I go into the doctor's office, they're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and this and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, my camera's about to die, so I'm gonna wrap this up. So saying all to say, do what you want to do, live your best life, stay prayed up. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll be back with more.